What led Adolf Hitler, seemingly invincible after the rapid conquest of Europe, to the precipice of defeat? As we delve into the annals of history, we find ourselves in the early stages of World War II, a time when Hitler, with his blitzkrieg tactics, had taken Europe by storm. Countries fell like dominoes before the might of the German army, and Hitler seemed unstoppable. Yet it was his insatiable ambition that would eventually lead to his downfall. In the summer of 1941, Hitler made a decision that would forever change the course of the war. He ordered the invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa. This was a move fraught with risks, but Hitler was lured by the prospect of gaining vast territories, eliminating the threat of communism, and securing his Eastern Front. But Hitler had an even more specific target in mind: Stalingrad. This city bore the name of his arch-enemy, Joseph Stalin, and thus held immense symbolic value for both sides. If Hitler could capture Stalingrad, he believed it would be a devastating psychological blow to the Soviets. Moreover, Stalingrad was the gateway to the oil-rich Caucasus region. If Hitler could control these oil fields, he could fuel his war machine indefinitely. However, Hitler underestimated the resilience and determination of the Soviet people and their leader, Joseph Stalin. Stalin was equally aware of the symbolic importance of Stalingrad and declared the city a fortress. He exhorted his people to defend their motherland to the last man. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Hitler, his decision to divert resources to Stalingrad had left his northern and central groups vulnerable. His focus on Stalingrad also meant that the German army was spread thin, stretched across a broad front. This would prove to be a critical strategic error, and so, the stage was set for one of the bloodiest and most pivotal battles of the Second World War. A battle that would not only shape the destiny of the war, but also signal the beginning of the end for Adolf Hitler and his dreams of a 1,000-year Reich. The German Sixth Army, under the command of Friedrich Paulus, arrived at Stalingrad in August 1942. The city soon became a battlefield, a maze of ruins and rubble, where every street, every building, every room was fought over with ferocious intensity. This was urban warfare at its most brutal, where soldiers fought face to face, often in close quarters, in a deadly dance of death and destruction. Hitler had given clear orders: Stalingrad must be taken at all costs. But the Soviets, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, had their own orders: not one step back. This was not just a command, it was a philosophy, a mantra that encapsulated the spirit of the Soviet Union in the face of the Nazi onslaught. The city was to be held, whatever the cost, whatever the sacrifice. For the Soviets, Stalingrad was more than just a city, it was a symbol of their resilience, their determination, their refusal to bow down to the Nazi war machine. And so, they fought, with a ferocity and tenacity that stunned the Germans. They fought for every street, every building, every inch of their city. In the words of one Soviet soldier, "We huddled in the ruins, in the cellars, in the sewers, and from there we fought. We fought with everything we had, because we knew there was no turning back." As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the German army found itself in a desperate situation. The city they had been ordered to capture at all costs had turned into a death trap. The Soviets had turned the city into a fortress, a labyrinth of ruins and rubble that the Germans could not penetrate. And as winter set in, the German army found itself trapped, with no way out, in the city they were ordered to capture at all costs. As the German forces struggled to survive, the Soviets, under the leadership of General Georgy Zhukov, prepared for a counteroffensive. With the German Sixth Army trapped in Stalingrad and cut off from supplies, Zhukov saw an opportunity to turn the tide of the war. The stage was set for a Soviet counteroffensive that would forever alter the course of World War II. Zhukov, a brilliant strategist, orchestrated a daring plan known as Operation Uranus. The aim was to encircle the German Sixth Army, cutting them off from the rest of the German forces and effectively trapping them in Stalingrad. The Soviets began by launching two simultaneous attacks on the flanks of the German army, areas that were weakly defended by Romanian, Italian, and Hungarian units. The attacks were successful, and the Soviet forces were able to break through the German lines. They then began to move inward, slowly tightening the noose around the German Sixth Army. Despite desperate attempts by the German forces to break out, the Soviets held firm, their resolve bolstered by the knowledge that they were fighting for their homeland. General Zhukov's role in this counteroffensive cannot be overstated. His meticulous planning, strategic insight, and unwavering determination played a pivotal part in the successful execution of Operation Uranus. He was the linchpin that held the Soviet forces together, coordinating their movements and ensuring that they stayed focused on their objective. Despite the harsh winter conditions, the Soviet troops pressed on, their spirits buoyed by the prospect of victory. They knew that they had the German forces on the ropes, and they were determined to deliver the knockout blow. By February 1943, the German Sixth Army was defeated, marking the first major defeat for Hitler's war machine. The Soviets had accomplished what many thought was impossible. The Battle of Stalingrad served as a testament to their resilience and tenacity, and it signaled a significant shift in the momentum of the war. The Soviet counteroffensive, masterminded by General Zhukov, had not only decimated the German Sixth Army, but also marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's dreams of world domination. The Battle of Stalingrad was over, but its impact was far-reaching. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the reality of the situation began to sink in for both sides. This was no ordinary defeat for the Germans. It was a turning point, a seismic shift in the trajectory of the war. The German Sixth Army, once a symbol of the unstoppable might of the Nazi war machine, lay decimated. Their commander, Friedrich Paulus, was now a prisoner of war, the first German field marshal ever to be captured. The loss was staggering, both in terms of manpower and morale. The psychological blow to Hitler and the German high command was immense. The invincible aura surrounding the Nazi regime was shattered. Hitler's dream of a swift victory in the East was now a distant memory. The defeat at Stalingrad had exposed the vulnerabilities of the German war machine and marked the end of their offensive in the East. On the other side, the Soviets emerged from the rubble of Stalingrad stronger and more determined than ever. The victory boosted Soviet morale, turning despair into hope, fear into courage. The Red Army, which had been on the defensive for so long, was now on the offensive. Stalin's order of no step back had galvanized the Soviet people. Their resilience and determination in the face of adversity was a testament to their spirit. The victory at Stalingrad had shown them that they could stand up to the German might and come out victorious. The Battle of Stalingrad was the beginning of a series of Soviet offensives. The Red Army began to push the Germans back, slowly but steadily, inching closer towards Berlin with every passing day. The tide of the war had turned in favor of the Soviets. Stalingrad marked a turning point in the Second World War, the first hint of dawn after a long and brutal night. The Soviet Union was no longer just surviving, it was now thriving, and this would set the stage for the final act of the war. The defeat at Stalingrad was the beginning of the end for Hitler's plans of European domination. The loss marked a significant turning point, not just in the trajectory of World War II, but also in the fortunes of Adolf Hitler. Post-Stalingrad, the once seemingly invincible German war machine began to falter. The German forces, having suffered substantial losses in men and material, were not able to recover fully. The defeat effectively halted the momentum of Hitler's forces, marking the end of their advances in the East. It was the first major military setback for Hitler, and it shattered the myth of the invincibility of the German army. The defeat also had a psychological impact. For the first time, the German public, who had been led to believe in their inevitable victory, were confronted with the reality of defeat. The morale of the German forces plummeted, while the resolve of the Allies only strengthened. The Soviet Union, galvanized by the victory at Stalingrad, launched a series of successful offensives that steadily pushed back German forces. Hitler's insistence on holding Stalingrad at all costs, his refusal to allow a strategic withdrawal, and his dismissal of the advice of his military commanders showed a fatal flaw in his leadership. His hubris and strategic blunders became more evident as the war progressed, contributing significantly to the eventual downfall of Nazi Germany. Stalingrad marked the start of a steady decline for Hitler's forces. From this point, the tide of the war began to turn in favor of the Allies. The Soviet Union, Britain, and the United States began to gain the upper hand, and the path to the eventual defeat of Hitler and the fall of the Nazi regime became increasingly clear. From the ashes of Stalingrad, the course of World War II changed, leading to the eventual defeat of Adolf Hitler and the fall of the Nazi regime. This pivotal battle served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and the resilience of those who stand against it.